Come on, one more time, give God some praise. Amen? Yes, man, have a seat. It's good to have you in the hill today. Listen, we've been walking through this counterculture series talking about Jesus' last days on earth, and we're going to keep going for a little while longer. But up until the resurrection, right, everything we've talked about, everything Jesus did, Jesus fulfilled everything, right? Jesus fulfilled everything that was to change in our lives everything that would be. Come on, somebody, right? The Bible says that he said it like this: I didn't come to abolish the law, but I came to fulfill it. Right? I came to bring purpose to it. I came to point it to really why it existed in the first place, and that's a relationship with the Father, right? Come on, somebody. And so we're going to continue in this series. We're going to be in Mark chapter 16, verse 14. We don't do this every week, but can we stand up as we read this? Just one verse today. Here's what it says. Afterward, say afterward. He appeared to the 11 themselves as they were reclining at the table, and he reproached them. Y'all, he got on to them. He reproached them for their unbelief and hardness of heart because they had not believed those who had seen him after he had risen. God, I pray you would challenge us, God. You would change us, and we'd be more like you today. That's our heart's desire. We love you, Father. In Jesus' name, amen. Maybe seated all over the place. Jesus walks in this room, and we'll talk about this in John's gospel, but he walks in the room and he gets onto them because of their lack of faith, because of the struggle they have to believe what he says that he did, that he was going to do what he said he was going to do, right? He shows up with them, the door's shut, the doors are locked, and he just kind of walks through the wall. Listen, in my life, even those moments when I was kind of shut up to some things, I'm so thankful he just showed up in my life. I'm so thankful that even the times that my arms were outstretched, he moved on my behalf, right? Now, we have to remove the hat that says it's a story, it's a Bible story, I've heard it 100 times. Right now, we're going on this journey, and we're all going to sit in this room with them, okay? Can we do that? We all good? So we're in this room, right? You're a disciple. You've left your business. You've left your family. You've left everything that was comfortable, that was normal, to follow this guy named Jesus. And he said he's bringing a new kingdom. And then he dies. Okay, and now, not only does he die, you've got the entire culture that really wants to kill you in the process, right? So you've left everything, and you feel completely alone, like no one cares about you, and you have no idea if you're going to live to see tomorrow. Essentially, that's really what they were facing, right? Now, in that, there was Mary that we talked about last week. Remember the angel came to Mary, and she's in the tomb, and Pastor Clinton preached on this, but she's in the tomb, and the angel says, remember what he told you? The angel is saying, listen, as you go through life, you're going to find circumstances, situations, pain, problems. They're going to be contrary to what God says about your life or what you feel. And he says, I need you to remember what he said and choose to believe what he said over what you hear, over what you think, and even over what you feel. He says, I need you to learn to trust God's word. This is what the angel's telling Mary, over what comes very normal and ordinary in your life. Right? That's this conversation. So she goes and she tells the disciples. Peter and John, they show up to the tomb. They realize he's raised. The Roman soldiers realize he's raised. All these people are sharing the word. And yet the disciples don't believe any of them. So you've got Jesus. They're in this room, locked in this room, afraid for their lives. We'll talk about this in a little bit, right? They don't trust anybody, and Jesus walks through the wall, and he's standing with them. Now, again, you're in this room, and you're terrified. You're like, oh man, at any minute, someone could come barging through that door and take my life. And boom, you turn, and there's Jesus sitting right there looking at you. Like, that's really what happened, so they're terrified, right? They're terrified at this moment. And for Jesus in this moment, it says he rebukes and reproaches them because of their hardness of heart or lack of faith. In this moment, Jesus was like, you didn't trust what I said. I told you I was coming back. Matter of fact, for 3.5 years, I preached the concept that I will never leave you nor forsake you. Lo, I'm with you to the end of the age. I've preached this message that said, I'm a friend that sticks closer than a brother. I preached this message that I'm an ever-present help in times of trouble. I preached this message, the kingdom of God is at hand. And for whatever reason, you've believed your predicament over my commandments. You believed what you feel over what I've told you. You didn't trust my word. And not only that, he says, I sent some people to you. I sent Mary to you. You didn't believe her. I sent Peter and John to you. They're sitting in the room. You didn't believe her. You didn't believe anybody that I sent. He said, you didn't believe my word, and you didn't believe the preachers of my word. And you wonder why fear and anxiety are corrupting your faith. We don't believe what he says or those he sends, and then we wonder why fear and anxiety are corrupting or twisting or contorting or perverting our faith. We wonder why we're being controlled by stress and anxiety and depression. Up to 96% of working adults deal with stress or anxiety. I wasn't for sure, so I looked it up in between services. 96%. You know who that means? That means you. That means probably you. Maybe not you, maybe it's your neighbor and everybody around you, but it's you. Come on, somebody. Now, for Jesus, this is so reminiscent of Jesus teaching his disciples in a recent miracle that he performed for them. So we're on this journey. In this moment, Jesus he's preaching this message in this story, and he's reminding them of another message, another testimony they had given him. Mark chapter 4, verse 39. Here's what it says. And he awoke and he rebuked the wind and he said to the sea, peace, be still. And the wind ceased and there was a great calm. So Jesus is in Mark, he's doing Jesus things, right? He's preaching, he's teaching, he's doing some incredible things, and God's moving. I'm sure he's healing people. Jesus is doing Jesus things. And as he's getting done doing Jesus things, he looks to the disciples. Who's that? You're in the story, okay? He looks at all of us and he says this, hey, listen, I need you to get in the boat with me and we're going to the other side. So they get in the boat with Jesus and they set sail for the other side. Now, as they're setting sail for the other side, this crazy storm, like this uncharacteristic storm, starts raging on the sea. Anybody get some hail or some good storms yesterday? Yeah, me too, man. It was awesome. My daughter, she's 15, Chloe, she was driving in that storm. First time ever driving in hail. I wasn't with her, but she made it home. Glory to God, amen. Now, this week, this doesn't pertain to my message, but this week, I had to do some work and haul some brush off and different things. And so I told Chloe, I said, bring the truck around and back up to the trailer. Now, she's got a permit. We're in the yard. She's never pulled a trailer, but she backs up, does it like a boss. And I'm like, you want to pull the trailer? And she was like, heck yeah, I want to pull the trailer. So we're pulling the trailer, and I can see the panic in her eyes. And we're not going far. We're just going to the brush pile down the hill. And she's going to back up to the brush pile, which is literally just like a little bit of this. Just a little angle turn. And that mug turned into like a 400-point turn with that little trailer. It was hysterical. We get done. I'm like, what'd you think about pulling a trailer? She said, I'm never doing that again. So Chloe's on her way home from this party with a couple of her friends that she went to, his birthday party or something like that. It was great, and spent the night, and they had fun, and she's on her way home, and as she's on her way home, this hailstorm arises that she didn't expect. That's essentially what was going on with these disciples. They have this storm, this unpredicted or unplanned event that changed their emotions. It changed the moment. It changed the surroundings. It changed what they were feeling in the moment. Right? Now, in the story, it says that Jesus arose. Now, it's pointing, the story in Mark, when he's in the hull of a ship, it's really pointing to the fact that he was in the grave. Come on, somebody. And that he was going to get out of the grave. He's going to get out of the grave because you had some stuff that you couldn't handle. He came out of the grave to help you handle some stuff. Come on, somebody. Called death, called sin, called hell, that you weren't able to handle in and of yourself. He arose so that you didn't have to. He arose so that as you face stuff, you didn't have to go through it alone. See, this story is so pointing to the resurrection of Jesus. He arose. I'm so thankful that he got up to help me in the midst of my storms. I'm so thankful that he got up to help me in the midst of my mess, in the midst of my troubles, right? He arose. Now, they're on the way, and the storm starts raging, and it was, again, totally unexpected. And they're looking at this, and they're like, Jesus is sleeping. Does he not care what I'm going through? Does he not care what I'm going through? Does he not care that I'm stressed out? Does he not care that we may die, they go on to say? And I feel like this is so true of most of us. And it's not that we think Jesus doesn't care, but for us, I've talked with people, and I'm like, well, let's pray about that. And here's what I hear a lot. Oh, no. It's not that big of a deal. God's got bigger things to handle. No, he doesn't. Because he can do it all at once. Okay, if the wages of sin is death, it didn't say the wages of lying is death. It didn't say the wages of murder is death. It said the wages of sin are the things that separate us from God is death. Meaning, listen, in God's eyes, it doesn't matter what you did. It all leads to the same conclusion. Okay? If that is true, then what must also be true is that in faith, right? So there's not big faith or little faith. It's just faith. It's just believing that God's going to do what he says he's going to do. Whether that's for a dad that we don't know if he's going to heaven or going to make it, right? Or that's a good parking spot. And I talk to people, they're like, well, I don't pray about good parking spots. I'm like, well, then keep walking in the hail. Come on, somebody. Man, I'm going to park up front. I ain't even kidding, man. I ain't gonna lie. I go to ball games, and I'm like, I'm getting a good spot. Now, it's four-wheel drive, so we may be in the grass. Come on, somebody, but we don't get a good spot, right? There's not big faith, little faith. It's just faith to God. Just like there's not big sin, little sin, it's just sin to God. The wages of sin is death, but faith draws God's heart to your situation, right? In this moment, they're like, we're gonna die. Jesus, you gotta wake up. And Jesus gets up, and he walks through the storm, and here's what he says. He goes, shh. He says, peace, be still. That word peace literally means, shh, I'm sleeping. It literally, shh. Here's the Greek word. The Greek word is siapaho. Say it. Siapaho. Say it, Clinton, just by yourself. Siapaho. You're not Clinton. Just Clinton. I'm just teasing you. Siapaho. I love you. Siapaho, right? Siapaho. And it literally means, be quiet. Be quiet. He gets up to this storm that is disrupting his rest. See, the purpose of fear from the enemy and anxiety and depression and stress and storms is to disrupt your rest or to disrupt your peace. And Jesus said, I'm sleeping peacefully. And this storm is interrupting what God called me to, shh. I'm trying to sleep. I love that. It's like whenever if anyone got a little baby and the baby's colicky. Anyone ever had a colicky baby? We had 4 kids. Not one of them was colicky, but I've heard it's awful. But none of them woke up well, except for, I think, Jace. Jace is, now he doesn't. Now it's just Briley. But right, they didn't wake up well. But listen, when that baby's sleeping, if someone walks in the house loud, man, you threaten them for their life. Am I right? You're like, I will end you. You wake that baby up. Shh. Again, the anxiety or stress or storms, his purpose is to disrupt your peace or rest. So let's peer into this moment with the disciples and into their minds. He'd already told them they're going to make it to the other side. Now, as they're doing what he told them to do, they were met with some unmet or some unplanned disruptions or problems or storms. They were met with some things that they didn't feel that their lives were prepared for. And Jesus is sleeping. Now, the disciples in the middle of it, man, they're totally afraid for their lives. Man, they are afraid they're going to die. Now, how did this start? It just started, they're on their way, and there's always that guy, right, that's kind of a mess, and they start talking to one another, and they start struggling, and they're going through all this stuff, and all of a sudden, they're in this place where they're like, we are going to die, right? We're not going to make it, and Jesus doesn't even seem to care. Now, here's the reality, guys. They're only going to die in the reality of their minds. It's never as bad as you think it's going to be. Most of the time. I shouldn't say never. Almost always, it's not as bad as you think it's going to be. It's always worse in the reality of your mind, which, by the way, isn't reality because you don't get your own reality. You don't get your own truth. You don't get your own facts. You get your own feelings, and that's a different story, right? So what's happened is they allowed their minds, they allowed their doubts, they allowed their speech patterns to totally overwhelm their faith. They allowed what they heard, they allowed what they thought, they allowed what they felt, and they allowed what they spoke to dictate their belief system. And this is why the Word and Jesus spend so much time talking about controlling our minds and thoughts. Look at the way 2 Corinthians 10, 3-6 says it in the Message version. I really like this. Check this out. Here's what it says. Just kidding. Here's what it says. He says it like this. The world is unprincipled. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there. The world doesn't fight fair. But we don't live or fight our battles that way. We never have, and we never will. The tools, I love this, the tools of our trade aren't for marketing or manipulation. Whoa. But they are for demolishing that entire massively corrupt culture. Wow. We use our powerful God tools for smashing, check this out, warped philosophies, tearing down barriers erected against the truth of God, fitting every loose thought, every thought that seems to run amok in our minds, every thought that we begin to be fearful of, every thought that we begin to chase, every thought that begins to lead us into a bad place. We fit that thought and that emotion and that impulse, that desire that happens right now into the structure of a life shaped by Christ. So it's like this. He's like, you're the putty, right? And your putty is nothing until you form it or fashion it. And he said, the truth is, what he's showing us is you've got this natural propensity to be, just kind of exist and do what feels good in the moment. He goes, we begin to shape that and form that and fashion that into a life shaped by Christ. We use our powerful God tools for the smashing of our philosophies, right? Go to the next verse. He says this, our tools are ready at hand for clearing the ground of every obstruction, building lives of obedience into maturity. Guys, check this out. This is what he's saying. He's like, look, life, the culture in which we live, and even your own heart can fool you. And even your own mind will manipulate you. Anybody have that thought that you just can't get rid of it? And it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. You know why? Because your mind doesn't fight fair. Your mind doesn't fight fair, right? He says that's why we demolish the culture that says, I think if I think it, I probably am it, right? Because Jesus always turned culture upside down. I love what he says. These God tools smashed warped philosophies, tearing down barriers that have been erected, tearing down idols that have been placed in a place of supremacy against truth. Kind of a counterculture moment. Culture, guys, has always had thoughts and philosophies that go against God's truth. Now, today, it looks different than it did. But it's really not changed. Today, it's with gender. It's even with age. It can be with race. It can be with a bunch of different things. And the philosophy is, I think, therefore I am. That's today's culture that's erected itself against the truth of God. Is, if I think it, therefore I must be it. And here's the reality. That's not true. I'm not what I think I am who he says I am. You are who God made you to be. Come on, somebody. And I love it because you are who God made you to be in the womb. Because before he formed you in the womb, he knew you. That's what the word says. You knit together, the psalmist said, my inmost being within my mother's womb. Matter of fact, in our reading, in our Bible reading, if you follow online with all the other people at the Hill, in Romans 1, it says this, they traded the truth of God's word for a lie. Now, we generalize that, and that's true. Our culture has done that. And so some people have God's truth about their life that says they were born male, but then they're like, well, maybe I feel like I'm a female, so I'm trading what God says for what I feel. So two things. First of all, what if I feel like cutting everybody's brake lines today? Are you with me? I'm not being mad. I'm just saying, that's real. Like, I don't get to just do what I feel, right? I have to do what shown. Secondly, they trade the truth of God's word for his lie. And we tend to look at that, but I want us to look introspectively for a minute. How have you traded God's truth for a lie? Because some of you have believed this lie. My marriage isn't going to make it. Some of you believe this lie. I'm a failure. I'm worthless. I don't matter to anybody. I don't have value. No one cares for me. And can I tell you what you're doing? You're trading God's truth, what he says about you, for a lie. The unfortunate reality is a lot of us live in the world of Romans 1 because we choose not to believe what he says. And we choose to live in the world that says, I feel. Right? These disciples were no different. Right? They're in that same place. Guys, the fight of the enemy and the culture, it's always been over truth. It's always been over truth. Paul is writing us and he's showing us the importance of controlling our thought life. And we control our thought life by submitting to God's thoughts. So the question then is, how do we submit to God's thoughts? Well, we control the gates. We control what we hear. We control what we see. So I was with this guy one time. We were riding. It was a long drive, and he was listening to the news. And I finally, after like hours, I was like, bro, I need you to turn that off, man. I want to jump out the window right now. I'm so depressed after listening to this for 2.5 hours. He's like, well, we got to be informed. I'm like, yeah, I was informed like 4 hours ago, right? Like I was informed in 20 minutes. We need to be informed. We don't need to be naive. That's not my point at all. My point is, what was going on is he was listening to the news and he was believing a narrative and it was causing depression in my life. And so I got to control the negativity of my life. I got to control that stuff because I just can't let anybody speak into my life, especially when it comes from an organization that's literally, its sole purpose is gaining viewers. So what they're doing is they're not really looking to bring me information. They're looking to pander to my preference. And I don't need someone to pander for my preference. What I need is truth. I don't need you to agree with me. I need to agree with him. And then we've got the people in our lives that are just negative. Y'all know that person? I'm imagining these cats on the boat, and they're like setting sail, and they're like, shh, Jesus is sleeping. Life is good. Here we go. And all of a sudden, the wind starts going a little bit. And then, like that negative person, it's Nathaniel, I think, he was a disciple. We'll call him Negative Nathaniel, right? So old Nathan, old Nate dog is on the boat. Come on, somebody. And that wave starts going, and Nathan's like, you feel that wind? We're going to die tonight. Man, there's some clouds. Oh, it's going to hail a tornado. Yeah, it's going to throw us. We're going to get drowned and eaten by a whale. It's going to be bad. Nathaniel, has a way of just being negative on every situation. Nathan is the guy that he goes to bed at night and he wakes up and his toe's sore and he's like, oh, my toe's sore. Oh my gosh, I wonder if I broke my toe while I was sleeping. Oh my gosh, I'm going to get infection in my toe and they're going to amputate my foot. Oh my gosh, they're going to amputate my foot and then I'm going to get staph and then they're going to take my leg and then I'm going to die of staph infection because of my leg, because of my foot, because of my toe, because I broke it at night when I was sleeping. Always jumping to the absolute most bizarre conclusion in the world. That's negative people. I've told people that I'm like, bro, I need you to be positive or happy. You are a son of the King of Kings. Why are you so depressed? But Nathan's on the boat and he knows we're going to die. Nathaniel was probably like, I knew I was going to die in a storm with the Savior of the world in the boat. On Good Friday, and I talked about it last week, but on Good Friday, we talked about the triangle. How do we control our thought life? Well, there's a cycle of life. It's called the triangle. And it's like this. I have thoughts. And if I don't control my thoughts control my feelings control my actions, and my actions control my thoughts, which control my feelings, which control my actions, which control my thoughts. So I have a bad thought, and I think maybe I'm a terrible pastor, and then I start feeling like a terrible pastor. So then I start acting like a lazy, terrible pastor, which makes me think I'm a really bad pastor, which makes me feel like, are you with me? It makes you feel like a really bad mom, and I feel like a bad mom, so all of a sudden, because you feel that way, right, you get what you face, faithful, you're faithful what you focus on, you start acting like a really bad mom, and you start neglecting, and that makes you think, I was terrible yesterday, now I feel like a bad mom, now I'm acting like a bad mom again today. And what happens is we dive into this cycle that we can't seem to break. And Paul is preaching, and Jesus is preaching, and he says, I want you to break the cycle. But how you break the cycle is not, I'm just not going to do it anymore. It's, I change my thought patterns. I entirely demolish this culture. This is what he's saying. They wake Jesus up. Jesus, we're going to die. Jesus wakes up. He gets up, and what's he say? Shh, peace. Shh. That's what it means. What is the word, Pastor Clinton? Siapaho. Good job. Look at him go. He's growing up on us. He wrote it down. Good man. Pastor, I wrote it down too, and I've mispronounced it 14 times this service alone. Now, what's Jesus doing when he says Siapaho? He's showing you how to deal with the storms of your life. He's saying, I see you, I hear you, but I ain't got to pay attention. Benny was 2. Benny was 2 years old. Benny, I've met my match with Benny. I'm loud. I'm a little bit like, I'm in all good and fun. I like to pick on people in a fun way. I'm not a bully, but we like to have fun. And Benny's just like me. So Benny's 2, y'all. And he's sitting in the couch, probably in a little diaper and a t-shirt, and he's watching TV. And I'm like, hey, Benny boo, I love you. And he's just on TV. I said, hey, Benny. He's 2, by the way. I said, Benny. I said, Benaiah. I said, Benaiah Judge. Now I'm getting ticked, y'all. I said, Benaiah Judge. Benaiah Judge Norman. You know when mama or daddy pull out the last name, you in trouble. Benaiah Judge Norman. I said, Benny J, you listen to me. I said, Benny. And he just went like this. He just went, got ya. Cat was 2. I thought, Megan laughed, and she looked at me. She's like, you met your match, bro. Jesus is showing us how to deal with these storms, right? I see you, but I don't have to listen to you. But it's so hard because in the process of our life, we are in the process of doing what we feel like we're supposed to do. We have these storms that are raging on the inside of us and around us, right? And you may have this point of view that's like, this is going to take me out, right? But the problem is we live in this place of imagined reality over reality. What I imagine is going to happen is what's going to happen. It's called imagined reality. This storm's going to take me out. This marriage is going to end. My kids are never going to come back into the faith. And we start jumping to these spiritual and emotional, irrational conclusions. Let me give you an example. Man, he said he was going to be home 20 minutes ago. Talking about your kid. Oh my gosh, he's probably gotten in a car wreck. We jump to these conclusions that are irrational, right? And Jesus is showing us when he says, shh, he's saying, no longer, I see you, but no longer do you affect my focus. No longer do you get to hold my attention. Jesus, shh. And he turns around to the disciples and he says, man, where's your faith at? Now, why does Jesus say that? Now, they had never seen storms be quieted. So it wouldn't have been fair for him to assume they knew they could quiet storms, right? Because he came to be the blueprint to show us what was capable, what was possible when the kingdom of God was at hand. So they had never seen that. So it wouldn't be fair for him to be like, you should have calmed the storm, because they didn't know they could calm the storm. So why was he frustrated with their faith? Because at the beginning of the story, he said, we're going to the other side. And as they were going to the other side, they were met with this reality of a storm that disrupted their peace. It disrupted their planning. It disrupted what they thought was going to happen. And for a moment, it captivated their hearts and it corrupted their faith. In this moment, Jesus is like, you didn't trust my word. You didn't trust what I said. Benny, again, another Benny story. We were leaving Springfield a week or 2 ago, and I said, we'll get an ice cream or something. We'll get a treat. And we didn't drive for like 7 minutes. He goes, Dad, remember, you promised. I said, remember what? He said, you promised we'd get a treat. I said, Benny, have I ever lied to you? Now, he's 6 now, and he thinks he's brilliant, and he is. And I said, have I ever lied to you? No. And it dawned on me. that I've never given that 6-year-old boy a reason to think that I would not be a man of my word. So it's not learned behavior that makes him think people are going to fail him. It's not learned behavior. It's a natural propensity to struggle to trust that we all have. Jesus is saying you had this natural propensity to think I would fail you. And I've never failed you yet. I don't know who I'm talking to, but I'm not going to start now. But I did this, and now it doesn't look like it's okay. Listen, it's just a storm. If he told you to get to the other side, guess what? You'll get to the other side. You're going to make it. Come on, somebody, right? See, this moment in Mark 4, Jesus is really, I feel like, pointing to in Mark 16. Frustrated that they didn't believe him at his word. They didn't believe him at his word. The disciples are in this place, is he really alive? Again, imagined reality. Can it really happen? What if it doesn't? John 20, 19 through 22. I love this. So when it was evening, on that day, the first day of the week, and when the doors were shut where the disciples were for fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood in their midst through the wall. And he said to them, a little more monotone this time, and he said to them, peace be with you. He's like, hey, you got peace. Keep going. And when he had said this, he showed them both his hands, and he showed them his side, and the disciples rejoiced when they saw the Lord. And then, so Jesus said to them again, peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, I also send you. And when he said this, he breathed on them, and he said, receive the Holy Spirit. Jesus walks in this room. What were the doors? The doors were closed or locked. Why were the doors locked? For fear of the Jews. Locked meant to be shut up or to withhold. Are you with me? For fear of the crowd. Now, were they doing what they were supposed to be doing in their call? Yes, they were following Jesus. But fear came into their life of the culture around them, and they were so afraid of the culture around them that they began to push everyone else out. They were so afraid of what could happen, they began holding people away from them. And guys, this is what we do in life. When we're met with we experience unmet expectations, we start pushing people away. And we say, I don't know if I can trust you yet. I don't know if I can trust you yet. I don't know if I can trust you yet. And then we complain to God that we're all alone and no one cares. Listen, you can only hold people at bay for so long before they feel unwelcome in your life. And then it's not on them. Jesus, in this moment, they're essentially holding the world at bay because they're so afraid of what might happen. And guys, when we're staring at an imagined reality that is scary, we turn inward and we build walls and we shut doors, keeping everyone out, even those people that God's called or commanded to help us. And in my life, I want to shut the doors a lot of times too. When I face some stuff, man, I want to pull that door, lock it, and I want to maybe play Call of Duty or something, right? I want to shut people out as well. And what I really need to do is not shut people out. I need to change my mind. When Paul's talking about this stronghold in 2 Corinthians 10, kind of a few more minutes, is that okay? Paul's talking about the stronghold, and he says it like this in the King James. Do you have the King James version of that by chance? It should be 2 Corinthians 10, like 4. It says, we cast down every imagination or lofty thing that sets itself up against God, right? Taking every thought captive. That's the setting of Scripture. Here's where this came from. These pirates were raiding Roman and trade ships of the day. So these lucrative ships were coming, and these pirates would come. They would raid the ships, steal the goods, and then they would sail into this cliffy region in the sea. And then they would go and they would hide up in the rocks and they would steal everything. And it was bleeding Rome and bleeding the region dry of their resources and of their finances and of their goods. And so the Romans were like, hey, we've got to figure this out. We've got to have someone that has a solution. And so they contracted this guy named, I think his name was Pompey. And they said, listen, Pompey, I'm going to give you whatever you want, however much money, whatever you need, and however long you need, if you can figure out how to deal with these pirates. And Pompey said, okay. So here's what he did. He got a boat, and he got a catapult with like a grappling hook. You know, when it hits, it has those teeth on it, and he would shoot it up into these strongholds, or fortresses they were called. He would shoot it up into the stronghold or the fortresses, and then they would start wheeling it down. And when he would wheel it down, it would get caught in between rocks and the cliffs, pulling the cliffs themselves, the rock formations and the cliffs, pulling them down, exposing the enemy. This is the reference Paul has here. He says this, he says, I'm just looking at it. He says, Adam, there's some stuff that goes on. And what happens is, Matt, in the process of the stuff going on, Ashley, the enemy comes. You're trying to do good. You've got the goods. You've got the merchandise. You've got the anointing. You've got the calling. You are a good enough dad because he says. You are a good enough mom or wife because God the Father says. But in the process of you going to do what you're called to do, the enemy comes in and he hijacks everything that I've given you, and he goes to this stronghold of this fortress. This is the reference for Paul. And he said, you have these God-shaped tools to tear down everything the enemy's trying to steal in your life. Every fortress, every stronghold, you can tear it down. Every lofty thing that sets itself up against God. This is what he says. And then he says it like this. Jesus said, peace be with you. What was the word, Pastor Clinton? No. That was the word. That was the peace word whenever there was a storm. It's not the same word when he walks in the room. The word when he walks in the room, check this out, guys. The word when he walks in the room is this, irene. Pastor Clinton said, irene. Irene, yeah. Me too. Irene. Which means inward harmony, no rage or war, no more inward commotion. You will not fear or deal with inward commotion anymore. I need you to understand what Jesus is showing us in these two stories about peace. He says, when you're going through stuff, he talks to the storm around you. But then he turns and he talks to the peace inside of you. It's like this. Gary, come here. It's like this right here. It's like Gary's got all this stuff going on, and he's trying to figure out life and parenting, and his kids are growing up, and they're hitting puberty, and that's stressful. And he's starting this, I don't know what's all going on. He's starting this business, and he loves to bow hunt, and he loves to archery shoot. He's on his way to being a Hall of Fame archery shooter. I really believe that. And in the process of that, God says, you've made archery your God. And I want you to let go of what you think really matters, and let me show you who really matters. When you let go of what you think you want, God was saying to him, when you let go of what you think you want, I will prove to you that I'm everything you will ever need. So he starts doing that. I don't know anything going on, but he starts doing that. And my assumption is life starts happening. And he starts being tormented in this place called an imagined reality. And 2 Corinthians says we tear down every imagination that disagrees with what God's told you in your life. We tear down every thought and every truth that the enemy's trying to, so we completely demolish that culture. Jesus says, I speak to the storm around you and tell it to shh, get in front of you. And he says, I protect you from every storm. But then he turns around and he speaks to the storm, the peace inside of you. He tells the storm to be quiet, but then he says the peace of God that resides in you needs to start talking and filling your mind. See, essentially, Jesus in this moment, he tells the disciples, what you need right now isn't deliverance. It's peace. Irene. And then he says this, he breathes on them and he says, receive my spirit. Receive my peace. And now, when the enemy tries to lie, my peace resides in you. And the spirit of truth resides in you. And when he tries to tell you you're not going to make it, truth says, oh, you are more than a conqueror through Christ Jesus. When I feel like I'm a failure, he says, oh, you're an overcomer by the blood of the Lamb and the word of my testimony. Come on, somebody. I'm blessed in the cities and the fields and coming and going. I'm a head and not the tail. Whenever the enemy tries to take root in a stronghold, peace speaks up. He says, you're going to make it. convinced what happens in so many of us, guys, is from this side to that side, we get caught in the storm. And it begins to mess with our faith and direct our attention. And I feel like God was walking in on these disciples through the wall to say, you can trust me. I've never let you down, and I'm not starting now. Matter of fact, he says it like this, and in the Great Commission, lo, I will be with you always, even to the end of the age. Would you bow your heads all in place? Father, here's what I pray right now for each and every person in this place. And it's a variety of things. It could be, man, you could be doing anything from starting a new business to building a house to feeling like you're on the verge of divorce. And here's what I have, a word for each and every one of you. Peace, irene. No more inward commotion. The peace of God that transcends understanding will rule. That will rule means to referee your heart and mind. It'll say, nope, that's a foul. You can't encroach on that. The peace of God, the irene of God, will referee your heart and mind. I pray when the enemy tries to bring lies, they'll pull down every lofty imagination that tries to set itself up against the truth of God's word. When it tries to trade God's truth for a lie, God, the irene of God, the peace of God, will tell it can't stay, it has to go. Taking every thought captive and walking in the fullness that God, you have for their lives. Lord, I declare in Jesus' name, peace across this room. Peace in marriages. Peace in children. Peace in grandkids. Peace in futures. Peace in jobs. Peace with our employers. Peace in our lives. Peace in Jesus' name. You are good.